People respond to art in the ways that they do because of the different emotions it brings out of them. It could bring them back to a place in time, a certain memory that they really love and or hate, and that's kind of the beauty of it, all the different perspectives you get out of it. It has to do a lot with the color and lines and subject matter. They all come together and play at really capturing that emotion. The art that I really respect is kind of when the artists are being daring and going where no one has gone before. For the instance, like with Van Gogh, people thought he was crazy because of the colors he was using and the way in which he used his lines, and now he's a renowned artist, and also in the material that the artist is depicting. So in like the late 1700s, there was a piece called The Drunken Cobbler, and that's when the artist depicted kind of the real life, like what was going on in the middle class rather than just what was being depicted in the upper class. So they were kind of really pulling at different emotions that hadn't been pulled at before. So I really love figure drawings, and this one especially because just of all the lines, the kind of movement it gives the figure, and also how it's like unfinished towards the bottom. I just kind of like how it transitions out like that. And I know it's not perfect, and I like figures that aren't completely perfect. My favorite artist easily is Salvador Dali. I really enjoy his work in surrealism and how he just is really daring in everything that he does with the subjects that he uses, the colors. He's also just a really goofy guy, so I like just how that's kind of shown through each of his pieces. So this is the piece I'm most proud of. It took me a lot of time just because of the size of it. It's not that big, but just the detail that had to go into it, and parts that I didn't think would be as hard turned out being really difficult, like the detail in the ear, all the shading that had to go into that, the hair, just the way it reflects because it's darker. I put my heart and soul into this piece, and I think it shows. So these are all the natural pigments that would go into making paint back in the day. We're really fortunate now that we can just go to the store and buy a tube of paint, because there was a lot that went into mixing the binding agents and the pigments together. So for something like tempera paint, they would have to extract the egg yolk and to mix it with a pigment. For something like oil paint, they would have to take linseed oil and mix that with the pigment, and then for something like watercolor, they would take gum arabic, sugar, and water and mix that with the pigment in order to get the results that they wanted. And in the case of working with frescoes, which is limestone, they'd have to work on it when it was wet, so they would lay down the plaster and have to work really quickly to paint. So in that case, they would only have to mix the pigment and water because it just kind of soaked right up into the stone. So this piece, I wanted to incorporate a few different elements to it, one being the contrasting colors, another being the perspective, so like the boxes in the sky, and the third being the atmospheric perspective as you get further on back and how it gets more gray. The idea behind this piece was that it kind of shows how we treat our environment and how we like maybe don't want to talk about it or avoid it. So that's why this is all really dark down here, and how people kind of like have their heads in the clouds almost literally in this piece, and how we just kind of avoid the problem. So these are just some of my sketches. I really like drawing figures, so these are mostly of nude women. I particularly like drawing women because of all the kind of voluptuous like curves we have, and I just think like all the depth and shadowing that you can get out of these is fascinating. And I like doing all different angles and featuring different body parts. In these, you'll notice I typically don't draw a face just because these are some of my quicker sketches, and faces typically take a really long time. So I kind of like focus on different parts. Most of my sketches are just with graphite, and then a few of them are with charcoal.
So I think it's interesting how the Egyptians and in like ancient Greek, they would try to show a figure when they didn't really figure out depth yet. So they would have to do the face by the side profile because they didn't know how to show the depth of the nose or the eyes or the mouth or anything. And they put the body facing this way, so you already have a contorted figure, and then you have to put the feet one way, just like in here, because they don't know how to show the feet coming from the front.
So I got my start in art with just probably like most kids do. You kind of grow up doing art projects and crafts in school with your family, stuff like that. But what really got me interested was in 4th grade we had a club, an after-school club called Young Rembrandts. So we would go there and paint or draw and like a bunch of different famous paintings. So my most memorable was The Persistence of Memory by Dali. That was my first exposure to Dali. And then from there I just kind of delved more and more into it. In high school we got to take specific classes. It wasn't just art class anymore, it was painting like oil and watercolor or drawing. So that was kind of how I got my start, was through school. So I'm not really sure what it takes to succeed as an artist, but I do think it has a lot to do with the people that you know and how far you're willing to go to get there.